For years, fans around the world have watched Celine Dion's life unfold in the spotlight. But behind the success, there's been a story she's kept hidden until now. After 14 years of silence, Celine is finally ready to tell the truth. Join us as we uncover the real story behind Celine Dion's silence and what she's finally revealing to the world. The pain before fame. Celine Dion's story begins in a small town called Charlemagne, about 30 kilometers from Montreal, Canada. She was born on March 30th, 1968, the youngest of 14 children in the Dion family. Her parents, Ademar and Thérèse Dion, worked hard but had very little. Her father was a butcher, and her mother was a homemaker and musician. The family lived in a modest home that was often crowded and noisy, filled with the energy of a large, close-knit family. Celine has often said that her early years were poor in money, but rich in love. Her parents were both musically inclined and passed that love on to their children. The Dions had their own small family band, which performed in the parents' piano bar called Le Vieux Baril. Celine grew up surrounded by songs, instruments, and the laughter of late-night performances. She loved watching her siblings perform and dreamed of joining them. Music was not just entertainment, it was part of the family's identity, their way of expressing joy and pushing through tough times. When she was about 5 years old, Celine also went through a frightening accident that could have changed her life forever. She was hit by a car while walking near her home. She suffered a concussion and had to be hospitalized. For a young child, the experience was terrifying and left emotional marks that took time to heal. It was one of her first lessons in fear, fragility, and resilience, lessons that would resurface later in her life during much greater challenges. Her connection to music was clear from an early age. At only 5 years old, she gave her first public performance, singing at her brother Michael's wedding. Everyone was amazed at how confident she was and how powerful her voice sounded for such a young girl. That performance planted a seed in her family's mind. Celine wasn't just another singer in the family, she might be something extraordinary. When she was 12 years old, her mother and brother Jacques helped her write a song called It Was Only a Dream. They recorded a demo tape and decided to send it to René Angelil, a well-known music manager in Quebec. René was already famous for discovering local talent, but when he heard Celine's voice, he was completely blown away. He couldn't believe that such maturity and power came from a 12-year-old girl. René was so convinced of her potential that he mortgaged his own house to finance her first album, The Voice of God, in 1981. That decision changed both of their lives forever. The album became a hit in Quebec, and Celine quickly rose to fame in the French-speaking world. She started appearing on TV shows, performing at festivals, and winning awards. By her early teens, she was already a star at home. She soon began collecting Félix Awards and even earned her first gold records in France. Her fame spread across other French-speaking countries, and it became clear she was not an ordinary teen singer. But with fame came new struggles. Celine was still a child trying to balance school, work, and fame, which wasn't easy. Her schedule was packed, and there was little time for friends or a normal teenage life. She missed out on dances, parties, and ordinary experiences that most people her age take for granted. As she grew older, new challenges appeared. When she began to explore English language music in the late 1980s and early 1990s, some fans in Quebec criticized her, saying she was abandoning her roots. They accused her of turning her back on French culture to chase success in the United States. Celine later said that these comments hurt her deeply because she loved her home province and her culture. Still, she knew that to achieve her dreams, she had to take that risk. And just when her star began to rise higher than ever, life had more emotional twists waiting for her, especially in love. Fame's hidden price. By the late 1980s, Céline Dion had already conquered the French-speaking world. She was a household name in Quebec and had built a loyal fan base in France, Belgium, and Switzerland. But Celine had bigger dreams. She wanted to reach the global stage, and to do that, she needed to do something bold: sing in English. At the time, this was a major risk. Many French-Canadian artists had tried and failed to cross into the English language market, but Celine believed that her voice could bridge that gap. In 1990, she released her first English-language album, Unison. It was her way of stepping into a new world. To prepare for it, she spent months studying English and working with vocal coaches to adjust her pronunciation and tone for new audiences. This was not easy for someone who had grown up speaking only French, but her determination paid off. Unison included songs like "Where Does My Heart Beat Now?", which became a hit in the United States and other countries. It was clear that Celine's voice had universal appeal, powerful, emotional, and unmistakable. The success of Unison opened the door for a new chapter in her career, but it also created tension. While English-speaking fans were discovering a new superstar, some of her French-speaking fans in Quebec felt betrayed. They accused her of abandoning her roots for fame. For Céline, this backlash was painful. She loved her culture and her French identity, but she also wanted to grow. She had to prove that she could succeed in both worlds, even if it meant facing criticism from the people who had supported her from the beginning. Over the next few years, Céline continued to release albums that took her career to new heights. The Color of My Love came out in 1993, featuring hits like The Power of Love and Because You Loved Me. These songs showed off her vocal strength and emotional range, and they turned her into one of the most recognized singers in the world. Then came Falling Into You in 1996, which became one of the best-selling albums of the decade. It won multiple Grammy Awards, including Album of the Year, and sold more than 30 million copies worldwide. Her momentum only grew with Let's Talk About Love in 1997, which included her most famous song of all time, My Heart Will Go On. This ballad, written for the movie Titanic, became a cultural phenomenon. It topped charts in more than 25 countries and earned Céline an Academy Award and a Grammy. Almost overnight, she went from being a famous singer to a global icon. Her voice became one of the most recognizable in the world, and her performances filled stadiums across continents. When she started her Las Vegas residency in 2003, it was meant to give her more stability, but even that became a demanding routine. Performing night after night for years took both a physical and emotional toll. She often spoke about how much she loved her fans and performing, but behind the scenes, it was exhausting. She had to protect her voice, manage her energy, and balance family life, all while being under constant public attention. The media also added pressure. As Céline's fame grew, so did the tabloid stories. She was labeled the diva, and every move she made was scrutinized. People speculated about her personal life, her marriage, her looks, and even her health. Despite her open and warm personality, Céline was still a private person, and the rumors sometimes hurt her deeply. At the same time, her relationship with René Angélil was quietly evolving. He had discovered her when she was just 12 years old and had been her manager for years. Over time, their bond grew stronger and turned into something romantic. However, they both knew that their relationship would shock people. René was 26 years older than Céline, and many might not understand the connection between them. Because of this, they kept their relationship a secret for several years. Céline also faced tough moments that nearly derailed her career. At one point, the National Enquirer published a false story claiming that she was pregnant with twins. The rumor spread quickly, and she later spoke about how painful it was to have such a personal lie made public. For someone who had struggled with fertility issues later in life, those stories were deeply hurtful. Adding to that were rumors about her weight. As she became thinner in later years, tabloids and social media started speculating that she might be sick or suffering from an eating disorder. Céline firmly denied those rumors, explaining that she had always been naturally slim and that her busy lifestyle contributed to her appearance. Still, the constant public scrutiny was emotionally draining, and just as she reached the peak of her success, her personal life would take center stage in ways she could never have imagined, because love, loss, and heartbreak were waiting just around the corner. A love too heavy. Céline Dion's love story with René Angélil is one of the most well-known in the music world. It's a story that began when she was just a young girl with a dream, and he was the man who believed in her talent. Over the years, that professional bond quietly grew into a deep and lasting love. By the time Céline was ready to share that love with the world, she and René had already built a life together, built on trust, respect, and shared dreams. On December 17, 1994, the two finally married in a lavish ceremony at Notre Dame Basilica in Montreal. It was a grand celebration that reflected both their success and their deep affection for one another. The event was televised and watched by millions of fans who saw Céline dressed in a stunning gown with a long train and an elaborate crystal tiara that reportedly weighed several pounds. The wedding looked like a fairy tale, but behind the beauty, Céline experienced an unusual mishap. The famous tiara, which sparkled beautifully on camera, was so heavy that it actually caused a wound on her forehead. The pressure of the metal and jewels left her in pain throughout the ceremony. Afterward, she needed antibiotics to treat the swelling. Despite the discomfort, she kept smiling, determined to make the day perfect. The incident became one of those small human details that reminded people how even the happiest moments can come with hidden struggles. Céline and René's marriage quickly became one of the most admired in entertainment. Fans loved how close they were, not just as husband and wife, but also as creative partners. René had guided her career from the very beginning, and their trust in each other was unshakable. But their relationship was not without its challenges. Céline was at the height of her fame in the 1990s, touring the world and performing almost constantly. Finding balance between her booming career and her new role as a wife was difficult. Still, she made it clear that family always came first. For years, Céline and René dreamed of becoming parents, but the road to motherhood was not easy. Céline struggled to conceive naturally, and she was open about the pain and frustration that came with those challenges. She eventually turned to fertility treatments, enduring multiple procedures and emotional ups and downs before finally becoming pregnant. In 2001, at the age of 33, she gave birth to their first child, a son named René Charles Angelil. The joy she felt was indescribable. She often spoke about how becoming a mother changed her perspective on everything. Her son became the center of her world, and she often said that being his mother was her proudest role. Even as she enjoyed her new family life, Céline faced the pressure of balancing motherhood with her demanding career. Just a few months after giving birth, she returned to performing, which was not an easy choice. She had a newborn at home, but also millions of fans waiting to see her. Every time she went on stage, she carried the weight of wanting to be both a present mother and a dedicated artist. It was a struggle many working parents could relate to, but for Céline, it happened under the watchful eye of the public. Nearly a decade later, after several more attempts with in vitro fertilization, Céline and René welcomed twin boys, Nelson and Eddie, in 2010. The pregnancy was closely followed by fans around the world because Céline had been open about her fertility journey. She named the twins after two men who inspired her, Nelson Mandela and songwriter Eddie Marnay, who had written her first songs as a child. The birth of the twins brought immense happiness to the Dion Angelil family. Céline now had the big family she always dreamed of, but even as she celebrated motherhood, the challenges continued. Taking care of 3 young children while managing one of the most demanding careers in show business was no small task. Céline often said that she wanted to be there for every milestone, every bedtime story, and every school moment. Still, her work required long periods away from home, especially during her Las Vegas residencies and world tours. She relied on René and a close team to help maintain stability for the children. Then came a turning point that tested her in ways she could never have imagined: René's health struggles. In 1999, René was diagnosed with throat cancer. It was devastating news for Céline. The man who had guided and protected her for so long now needed her care and strength. She immediately stepped away from the spotlight to be by his side during treatment. She once said that the months following his diagnosis were some of the hardest of her life. René eventually recovered, and Céline returned to performing, but the experience changed everything. She realized how fragile life could be and began to prioritize family even more. Unfortunately, the cancer returned several years later. This time, it was much harder to fight. Céline once again put her career on hold, canceling shows and postponing tours to care for him. She spent as much time as possible at home, helping him eat, speak, and find comfort during his treatments. And as the world would soon learn, the loss that awaited her next would test her strength like never before. The loss of René Angélil. By the time René Angélil was diagnosed with throat cancer in 1999, he and Céline Dion had already built a life that seemed unshakable. He wasn't just her husband, he was her manager, mentor, and emotional anchor. When the diagnosis came, Céline was at the height of her fame. She was performing to sold-out crowds around the world, but everything stopped the moment she heard the news. Her priorities shifted completely. Her main focus became helping René fight for his life. René underwent surgery and treatment that year, and Céline paused her career to care for him full-time. She canceled performances and postponed projects without hesitation, explaining to fans that family came before everything else. After several months of treatment, René went into remission, and the couple felt hopeful again. Céline eventually returned to the stage in the early 2000s, and for a while, it seemed like life was back to normal. However, the cancer returned years later. In 2013, René's condition worsened, and doctors had to perform another surgery to remove a tumor from his throat. The recovery process was long and difficult. This time, the disease was more aggressive, and René's health began to slowly decline. He faced new rounds of treatments and complications that weakened him over time. Céline, once again, stepped away from her work to stay by his side. On January 14, 2016, René Angélil passed away at their home in Las Vegas. He was 73 years old. His death marked the end of one of the most enduring love stories in the music world. Céline was devastated. Though she had known it was coming, nothing could prepare her for the emptiness that followed. At the time of René's death, their twins, Nelson and Eddie, were 5 years old, and their oldest son, René Charles, was 15. Céline often said that her biggest concern was how to explain the loss to her children. She wanted to protect them from pain while helping them understand what had happened. She told them that their father's spirit would always be with them, and that his love would never fade. In the days following his passing, Céline released a heartfelt statement calling René the only man I've ever loved and my greatest champion. She later said in interviews that she felt both deep sadness and gratitude. Sadness for losing him, but gratitude for the years they had shared. She organized a public funeral at Notre Dame Basilica in Montreal, the same place where they had been married more than 20 years earlier. Thousands of fans attended, and millions watched the service on television. It was a moment that reminded the world how much René meant, not only to Céline, but also to her fans. After the funeral, Céline took several months off to grieve privately and to be with her children. When she eventually returned to the stage, it was emotional. Her first performance after René's death took place in Las Vegas, and she dedicated it to him. She stood on stage, fighting back tears, saying that she still felt his presence with her every day. She told the audience that she was performing for him and through him. But even as she resumed her career, the challenges of widowhood were overwhelming. For decades, René had managed everything: her contracts, her career decisions, and their family finances. Suddenly, Céline had to handle it all on her own. She was now a single mother, a performer, and the head of a large business empire. She admitted that she often felt lost without René's guidance, describing it as an identity crisis. For most of her adult life, she had been Céline and René. Now she was learning how to be just Céline. Loneliness became a constant companion. Céline said that she missed the small moments most: the conversations, the laughter, and the comfort of his presence. She poured her energy into raising her children and keeping René's memory alive in their home. They talked about him often, celebrated his birthday every year, and continued to honor him in small ways. Motherhood became even more important after his death. Céline said that her sons were her reason to keep going. She didn't want them to grow up surrounded by sadness. Instead, she wanted to show them strength, love, and hope. She once said, "I still see my husband every day through my children." Over the years, the public has sometimes speculated about whether Céline would ever find love again. She has always answered honestly, saying that she is not ready and that she still feels deeply connected to René. "He's the love of my life," she said in multiple interviews. "He's still with me." "I'm not looking for another man." René's death was not just a personal loss for Céline, it was a turning point. For the first time, she had to continue their shared dreams alone. Every song she sang and every show she performed carried a piece of him. She described it as both a burden and a blessing. Painful because he was gone, but beautiful because his influence lived on in everything she did. Céline often says that René gave her the tools to stand on her own, even if he wasn't there to see it. His belief in her was so strong that it continues to guide her today. She honors him in her performances, in her family life, and in the choices she makes. His love became the foundation she still stands on. But as she slowly learned to live without him, another battle began. This time, one that would test her health, her strength, and her spirit in new and unexpected ways. Her body's betrayal. For most of her life, Céline Dion was known for her strength, discipline, and extraordinary voice. But long before she revealed it to the world, she was quietly fighting a mysterious illness that affected her body in painful and frightening ways. She later said she had experienced symptoms for nearly 17 years before doctors finally discovered the cause. It began with small, confusing signs. Céline started to notice muscle stiffness, sudden spasms, and problems with her balance. At first, she thought it was exhaustion from performing. After all, she had spent decades traveling, rehearsing, and singing night after night. But as the years passed, the symptoms grew worse. Her muscles would tighten uncontrollably, and she sometimes found it difficult to walk or control her movements. Even her singing, something that had always come naturally, started to feel different. For years, she went from doctor to doctor, searching for answers. The tests were endless, but no one could explain what was happening. She continued performing, hiding her pain from fans and the public. She once said she didn't want to worry people or seem weak. During this time, she also cared for her husband, René Angélil, who was battling cancer. Her focus was on him, not herself. Finally, after nearly 2 decades of uncertainty, Céline received a diagnosis. In December 2022, she released an emotional video on social media announcing that she had been diagnosed with stiff person syndrome, a rare neurological and autoimmune disorder. The disease affects the brain and spinal cord, causing severe muscle rigidity, spasms, and mobility issues. It can make even simple movements painful and unpredictable. Before that public announcement, Céline had already canceled several concerts. In January 2022, she postponed her Las Vegas residency, saying that her health was not stable enough to perform. Then, in May 2023, she canceled all remaining dates of her Courage World Tour. She said that performing was impossible because the illness affected not just her body, but also her voice, the one thing that defined her entire life. SPS affects people differently, but in Céline's case, it caused painful spasms, stiffness, and problems with her coordination. The disorder also impacted her ability to control her diaphragm, which is essential for singing. She described moments when her muscles locked so tightly that she couldn't walk or even speak properly. Her team and doctors designed treatment plans that included physical therapy, medication, and therapy for muscle relaxation. But there was no cure. Managing the illness became a full-time job. Céline shared that her daily life completely changed. She had to learn to live with constant physical limitations. Each day involved medical appointments, exercise routines designed to keep her muscles flexible, and careful monitoring of her symptoms. Some days were better than others. On good days, she could move more freely and enjoy time with her children. On bad days, even getting out of bed was difficult. She was honest about her emotional struggles as well. Céline said that when she finally learned what was wrong, she felt both relief and heartbreak. Relief because she finally had a name for what was happening, but heartbreak because there was no easy solution. She described moments of asking herself, "Why me?" and feeling angry about losing control of her body. She had built her identity on her voice and her stage presence, and now both were threatened. Despite her frustration, Céline remained determined to fight. Her doctors said that staying active was important, so she worked hard in rehabilitation sessions. She learned how to manage her spasms and tried to strengthen her body where she could. Friends said that even through tears and exhaustion, she never gave up hope that she would one day perform again. The impact on her career was enormous. Celine had to cancel world tours, pause her residencies, and step away from the spotlight. For someone who had performed almost non-stop for more than 30 years, that silence was hard to accept. She told interviewers that she missed the stage deeply, and that not being able to sing felt like losing a part of herself. Fans who had waited years to see her perform were heartbroken, but the outpouring of support was massive. In 2024, Celine revealed more details about her illness in her documentary, I Am, Céline Dion. She shared that she had kept her symptoms hidden for years because she didn't want to disappoint anyone. She said she had seen many doctors before, finally getting the right diagnosis. Some had dismissed her pain as stress or overwork, which delayed proper treatment. In the film and interviews, Celine broke down in tears as she described her struggle to accept her new reality. Still, Celine has found comfort in her children. Her oldest son, René Charles, now in his 20s, has stepped up to help care for her, while her twins, Nelson and Eddie, are constantly by her side. She has said that they give her purpose and the will to keep fighting. She also stays connected with her fans online, sharing updates and messages of gratitude for their love and patience. Her fans, in return, have shown incredible support. Many have sent letters, artwork, and videos expressing their admiration. During her rare public appearances, like when she appeared at the 2024 Grammy Awards to present Album of the Year, audiences gave her standing ovations. Celine later said that those moments gave her renewed strength to keep going, even when the days were difficult. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more stories about the real lives behind the world's biggest stars.